After several months of being back in Seattle, we were ready to continue the second part of our sabbatical in September. As we made our way through these beautiful cities and towns, I kept asking God to show me glimpses of Himself. God kept showing up in the most amazing ways. He showed me that He has children everywhere. In Edinburgh, it was a couple named Will and Yvonne O'Donnell from Liverpool. They had come to town to visit his sister who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Will shared a little bit about his faith journey and writings of Henry Nouwen while sitting with us at the dinner table. In Dublin, it was a taxi driver named Emmanuel from Nigeria. He was a professor at a university in Dublin and drove a taxi as a side job so he could send money to family in Nigeria. Emmanuel lived up to his name as he stayed with us until we got on the bus. He said that he will not be happy until we are on the bus. In Inverness, it was an Italian restaurant called Little Italy. All the restaurants in town were booked, and we stumbled upon what appeared to be a hole in the wall. It was an environment of Italian hospitality at its best. The owner there made us feel like royalty. In Waterford, it was the waiter at a restaurant called McCleary's. He made us feel at home and shared his personal story of how he ended up in Waterford. He has family in Washington, D.C., but he has made Waterford his home. This is inside St. Giles Cathedral. I literally could have stayed in there all day. There was just so much to see, so much to experience and to take in. And I just love being, it's stated that John Knox preached there and pastored there. They have what you call in Edinburgh a John Knox house. And it's become it's said that that's where he lived, but it's become a storytelling community. So they tell stories. They teach you how to tell your own story. Just a beautiful place. I fell in love with the cobblestone streets, so I got real close to the street and got a very close picture. So the image, the camera I had has it's a 2.8 aperture, so it blurs out the back part and zeroes in on what you're closest to. So I could have stayed and walked on that street all day. It was just amazing. This is the Prestonfield Hotel. This is we stayed there for a few days. Every morning, I made sure I got up, went to the restaurant in that area, and it was such a beautiful view. I didn't eat all of that. Now I want y'all to know. I ate most of it. That was your Scottish breakfast, and I've discovered that a Scottish breakfast and an Irish breakfast is not too much of a difference. This is Will and Yvonne O'Donnell. They're from Liverpool. They were in town visiting his sister, who's 77. He's 80. Yvonne is 79. Will still works as an engineer in Liverpool. They were sitting over to our left, and I think Michelle and I had ordered some kind of steak, and it came back a little rough. It wasn't quite as tender as we had hoped it would be. And Will overheard our discussion, and we kind of a little upset. And he engaged us and asked us, where are you from? And we mentioned we're originally from Augusta, Georgia, but we live in Seattle. And we must have talked for almost an hour or two. We closed the restaurant down. And they were just the most beautiful people. He talked about Henry Nouwen. The book that one of his favorite books by Henry Nouwen was The Prodigal Son. And he said when he was growing up, his dad would spend 20 minutes a day in devotion and reading and so forth. And so that's his practice as well. Just spend 20 minutes a day in reading and praying and devotion. And we just had a very fabulous time with the O'Donnells. In Edinburgh, it was just an amazing time. There's a lot of other pictures I could have shown you. Right now, I'm going to transition. This is Trinity Library. You will notice if you look to the top there, I didn't know that they were doing some remodeling, cleaning the shelves. So they had removed 200,000 books. So you still have books down at the bottom, but all of the shelves up at the top, all of the books had been removed. And it was amazing to see how long this place was and just beautiful. It was just the smell of this place was just amazing. Ideally that would be heaven for me if I could just stay in this place. It's just an amazing place. I was taking pictures all over the place. But Dublin was an amazing place as well. The people were beautiful. They had a display of Irish, really artistic Irish expressions of the Bible. It was the Irish who added artistic expressions to the Bible. You know, it was kind of like in that day and age, when people could not, the average person could not read, so it was important that you painted the picture, that the picture pointed to the reality of the Gospels, the reality of who Jesus is. And so everything had a purpose to it. So the monasteries and the monks were not only students of Scripture, but they were artists. They were poets. And so it was just amazing to walk around this place, and it was just so much to take in. I could have stayed there for probably 2 days. And this is just a couple of pictures of what I have. I tried not to walk around with a camera that was too big, so I had a point and shoot. Didn't want to. Well, in some of those places, they don't let you walk around with big cameras. If you have a point and shoot, they're not intimidated by that. They'll let you take a point and shoot or your phone. Now, this is supposed to be an Irish breakfast. I don't see much of a difference, but the ham was to die for. I can't lie to you about that. Now, some of you may come from an Irish background, so you know everything that's on the plate. I just ate it. Now, somebody knows what's the little black round thing up there? What do you call that? Black pudding. That's what it was. I ate most of it. I didn't eat a lot of it. But it's interesting because on my grandmother's side, they were the maiden name of my grandmother, my great grandmother, was McAlpin, and you could see the strong Irish features of the McAlpin family. And when I was growing up, my grandmother would cook pretty much every day, and she would cook sausages, mashed potatoes, and cabbage, and tomatoes and cucumbers with every meal almost. Well, I didn't think anything of it growing up. But I went to an Irish pub and they were serving bangers, mashed potatoes, cabbage. I'm like, wait a minute. This is what my grandmother serves. And then as I started doing some ancestry DNA research and, went through the census and on my grandmother's side, my great great grandmother's side, it would show their ethnicity or their color, and it said mulatto, which meant that they were mixed. And then it would show, black or Negro. But that's when it dawned on me that I have some Irish heritage in me. So it was interesting to go to Ireland and see some of the same foods that are being served that I ate every day. This is a picture of the hotel we were in. I should have taken a picture because this hotel was the Hotel Michelle that we had to go up 3 flights of stairs because when we got there, we didn't know that they didn't have an elevator. And so the guy at the front desk said, "Well, ma'am, it shows it on the website, but when you're carrying, a 50-pound, now that's my wife's luggage, 50 pounds." And you're carrying 50-pound luggage and 30-pound luggage up 3 flights of stairs. I mean, these are steep. And so the gentleman, needless to say, we only stayed there one day. We had to find a place that had an elevator. But it was a beautiful place to stay in. I did go to the Guinness Museum. And oops, let me go back. Let me see. Well, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Y'all can't. I don't. Y'all saw the picture anyway. You saw it. I don't want to dwell on that one, but I did have, a fresh Guinness beer and went through the museum and so forth. This was a hotel. I think it was called St. Kevin's Hotel, but many of the areas in the hotel had a kind of a sanctuary type feel, and it had stained glass windows, just very vintage and nostalgic hotel. And so down one of the hallways, there was this stained glass window, and I was just captivated by it. So I just took some pictures of it. One is at the top part. I kind of zeroed in on that and zoomed in on it and made it even bigger. But it was just such just a marvelous hotel to stay in, and just to be surrounded. Every hotel we stayed in, I got up about 7 in the morning and had breakfast, did some reading, some reflection and writing. This is transition to Johannesburg. Now we were on a sightseeing tour bus. I was sitting at the top. We were sitting at the top of the bus, and I saw these 4 ladies walking across the street, and I just love the alignment of how they are walking. You know, and then I saw the traffic light over to my left, and I just kind of just took a picture just to give a sense of a foreground and background of that picture. And they were just crossing the street, but to me, it was just a beautiful kind of a cadence and alignment of walk. And then this was closer to, this was in Soweto. And I saw this lady, walking, and she had actually snacks, they were peanuts on her head. So, and she was just walking. She wasn't trying to balance it. She's just walking. And uh, I didn't get the picture where she actually waved at us as we were driving by. This is the Soweto. These are the matchbox houses. This is, where Winnie Mandela uh, grew up in this area. So you drive through this area and you see these matchbox houses that you see one rich area, and then you see a extremely poor area. And as you drive through this area, you see people living in the worst conditions. But they had the beauty of Johannesburg is that they had a beauty about themselves. Just let me read just a little bit of what I wrote for Johannesburg. It says, there is so much I could say about these two great cities. Johannesburg was good to us in so many ways. We met people who took us to church, treated us to dinner, welcomed us into their home, and treated us like family. We will never be the same because of the kindness that Lowen and Tanya Smith shared with us. Tanya, her her cousin was a member of Mount Zion Baptist Church, and so when we were planning the trip and getting ready to go to Johannesburg, I reached out to the family, and they said, "Well, I'll connect you with Lowen and Tanya, and you don't have to worry about anything. They will take care of you." I don't have a picture of Lowen and Tanya, but they showed us around. They literally, pretty much took 2 or 3 days off and just took us to a game reserve, took us to dinner. The first place they took us was the church, and it was called Rivers Church. And we worshiped for an hour and a half. There was no preaching that Sunday, just singing. An hour and a half, we were on our feet, and it went by so fast. It was just amazing, the worship experience. It was probably about 2,000, maybe 3,000 people in the sanctuary, and it was probably the best worship experience I've ever had. It was just amazing. While in Joburg, we were struck with the harsh realities of the residual of apartheid that exists to this day. We had the opportunity to visit the Apartheid Museum. I could have stayed there for several days. There was too much to digest and process. Nelson Mandela, Bishop Desmond Tutu, and so many others sacrificed their lives in the struggle for freedom. There were so many nuances to apartheid that I would have never known had I not visited the museum and taken a tour through the areas of Soweto and the major role it played during apartheid. I was gripped and saddened by the extreme poverty where the matchbox houses were. There were mountains of garbage and open fields behind the houses in this area. But the people who live in this area have a certain dignity about them. Dr. King uses the term somebodyness. They still have a strong sense of faith, family, community, and joy. The living conditions have not in any way diminished their determination to thrive and survive. So this is an area, this is a closer look. Some of the matchbox houses where families have been living for years, they've added on and provided a gate or some protection around the houses. What I discovered is, as we were driving through, some families had established little businesses in front of their matchbox houses. I saw one guy had a sewing machine, and he was sewing under a tent, under a little tent that he had built. And then there was another guy who had a barber shop, and there were literally guys sitting in chairs waiting to get their haircut. This person was selling I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were selling artifacts, different things. And so it was just amazing to see their determination to thrive, even in that condition. These are some of the pictures that I took, just the way the women carried themselves. There was a sense of just beauty and love for family. This lady here is actually carrying a baby on the opposite side there. This is in the Soweto neighborhood. And then here's a couple other pictures. I did not get a chance. I wanted to do some research on what the ladies in the red and black. I wanted to know what kind of work they did. I wasn't able to find anything on that. But they were in an area, or they were leaving from an area that was the rich neighborhood. So it's just a contrast of rich and poor. And in the rich areas, you will see these fences that were probably about 8 feet tall and had barbed wire all around the top of the fences. Now we're going to transition to Zimbabwe. This is camel thorn trees. There are hundreds of these trees around. Now, this is the dry season in Zimbabwe. So, Doubt, which was the guy who was the ranger who showed us around in Blessmore, and I asked him, where did he get the name Doubt? And he said his father doubted whether he was his son or not. And so that was the name they gave him, Doubt. But Doubt had more faith than anybody I've ever met. And I love the passion in which he talked about the ecosystem of this area is Victoria Falls in the game reserve. And so as he drove us around every morning, he would pick up someone would slide breakfast through a little door. They would knock on the door, and they would slide breakfast through the door. Usually it's just some coffee. Most of the time it's just coffee and pastries. And 5:30 in the morning, they would knock and then slide through the door, and then they would tell us we'll be back to pick you up at 6:30. And so I get up and have a cup of coffee, and then they would come back at 6:30, and we would get ready for the safari. And normally it was relatively cold in the morning, but by noon it was 90 degrees. And so, but every now and then Doubt would stop, and I have a love for trees because my grandfather used to plant trees all the time. So I would ask him, what kind of tree is this? What kind of tree is that? And just love the artistic nature of the trees. It just speaks volumes to me as I look at how these trees are made. Buffaloes, they were hundreds, if not thousands, of buffaloes in the area. And but just you had when we would when we would go on the safari, as we were leaving the area where we were staying, there was an old buffalo. I guess he was retired or what have you. But he was close to where we were staying, and Doubt said, yeah, they have some old buffaloes, and they're not able to keep up anymore, so they end up kind of isolating themselves. They're not around the young herd, the young buffaloes, so they would isolate themselves. It's almost like they're in a retired state where they're not with the young ones. We were so close to these things, and they're curious. They don't ignore you. They stare at you. So I stayed in the Jeep. We stayed in the Jeep, We were surrounded, but they were beautiful as well. And giraffes, man, they were just amazing. Doubt was telling us that giraffes are very particular about what they eat. They're very picky. They don't just graze like regular other animals do. They look at the particular tree, they nibble here, they nibble there, and when you drive up, get close to them, they stare at you for a while. And it was just amazing to see giraffes, in the wild. And Blessmore, I don't think I have a picture of that. Michelle sent me a video of it, but Blessmore was showing us um, um, the bones of giraffes. Um, they are very territorial, and there was two alpha males who were fighting, and one alpha male broke the neck of the other giraffe. And and the giraffe, of course, you know died right there. But the whole, it's the circle of life. The other animals grazed on that giraffe for several months. And there was also, up on a hill, there was a what used to be a huge tree. And the elephants were like they're like the bulldozers of nature. I mean, they knock down trees and what have you. But this tree was so big that it actually landed on the elephant and killed the elephant. And so, Dowd is telling us these stories as we would drive, maybe um, a few kilometers, and he would stop and he would tell a story, and then we would move on to the next area. There were a lot of giraffes. Of course, animals have certain times of the day that they eat. Early in the morning, you see giraffes out, um, and in the evening, around 5 or 6 o'clock, 6:30, you see them out again, and they're so quiet. You really can't hear them at all. And you can hear them nibbling, but they don't make a lot of noise. Elephants are amazing. There were actually three elephants that surrounded our Jeep, and they just stood there and they just looked at us. And this one here, I mean, I was very close to this elephant, and he just stared at us. And doubt at one point we were on this dusty road, and there were maybe 20 elephants crossing our path. And you had an alpha male uh, up front, and then you had some young ones. But there was, I call Doubt the elephant whisperer, because when the last elephant passed by, it's almost like he thanked Doubt. You could just he did his head like this here. And I said, Doubt, you got to be an elephant whisperer, because the elephants know you. And then these two elephants, I have a video of them. It's almost like they're talking. They're looking at one another, and they're drinking water. But it's almost like they're at a coffee shop, just drinking, drinking coffee and just conversing and talking with one another. So it was just an amazing picture to see these elephants and how they interact with one another. So you have wild dogs over on the left, and on the right is a jackal. And it's interesting to see the behavior of these two animals. The wild dogs, Blessmore and Doubt said that um, there were many rangers taking different people out, and so they had a walkie-talkie. And so if they saw something in an area that they thought we might be interested in, and someone on a walkie-talkie shared with Dowd, there's some wild dogs. They just caught a gazelle. Oh no, impala. There was a lot of impala, and so it was probably about 6 or 7 wild dogs. And Dowd said you very seldom see them. He said he hadn't seen them in a while. So this is it's amazing to see wild dogs because they're always on the move. And so I didn't want to show you the graphic pictures. This one had, if you see his belly, you can tell he had just finished eating. And so when the wild dogs, they leave the food behind and then they go on another hunt. Well, the jackal waits for the wild dogs to leave. So he's lurking in the bushes waiting for them to leave, and then he comes, and he comes as well as buzzards and other animals come to get some of the food as well. A jackal pretty much is about the same size as some of the coyotes you see here in Seattle. And pretty much their mannerisms seem to be the same. Let me show you this video. We're in the Jeep, and the elephant is running at the Jeep. The experience that I had in Zimbabwe was very different in the sense that when the plane landed and my feet touched the ground, I felt something that I had never experienced before. There was a silence around me, and it was as if the spirit of the ancestors had risen from the ground to say, "Welcome home." I didn't see anything or hear a voice. I felt a communal presence of my ancestors wrapping their arms around me saying, "Welcome home." There have been many friends who have said to me, when you go, you will feel something. The weird thing is that I didn't have that feeling in Joburg. It was only in Zimbabwe. And so it was an amazing feeling to be in Africa for the first time. So that's, in a nutshell, just, I could have shown you thousands of pictures, but we would have been here a long time. So I tried to pick out the best pictures.